While the Sharks aren't expected to be very good this season, I have three candidates who I think are primed for bounce back campaigns this season. That's on Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly a part of Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow on wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be digging into players who I think are primed for bounce back candidates this season. And these players are all, one, an old friend, and two, new faces, but players who I think are primed to have some bounce back seasons for them. And we're going to start with, of course, our sweet Czech prince, Tomas Hertl. And it felt like a disappointing season for Tomas Hertl last year, but it wasn't. It was a little frustrating season, I think, from Hertl, and you could see it from his the way he played and the way the season ended for him. But I think there's plenty of room to grow this season. So last season, Hertl had in 79 games. Basically, remember, he missed 3 games, 2 from a suspension and 1 for the birth of his child. But he had 22 goals, 41 assists, which was a career high in assists for 63 points. And he played 19-17 time on ice last year. Compare that to the year before, which everyone thought was a great season from Hertl. 82 games, he had 30 goals, 34 assists for 64 points. So he was just 1 point less in 3 less games. And played 1956. So he did see a little bit of time on ice decrease there. But I think there's a chance for Hertl to bounce back to a potential, to actually maybe set a career high in points. So his career high came in 2018-2019, where in 77 games where he had 35 goals, 39 assists for 74 points. And I think Hertl could go back to being a 35-40 type of player, 35 goals, 40 assists this season. And it just kind of comes down to, one, him shooting the puck more. Last year, he saw a huge drop in his shots on goal. So in that 21-22 season, he put up 205 shots on goal. Last year, 183. Well, it's, 30 shots. 30 shots is basic. That's almost a half a shot a game right there. So, but the big thing for the Sharks is the amount of shots that walked out the door this offseason. So looking back last year, Timo Meier led the team on shots with 255. Of course, that was 255 in 57 games played. Erik Karlsson was second with 209 shots in 82 games. The Sharks had a total of shots on goal, 2,415. So I did the math already. That's almost 20% of their shots on goal gone. And now I know you're going to have guys, guys like Anthony Duclair, Mike Hoffman, William Eklund, Mikael Granlund, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. Plenty of these guys coming in, but I think Tomas Hertl, Tomas Hertl is going to be a big benefactor to this vacant shot attempts. And he said it himself that, he thinks he might have kind of passed a little bit too much and was kind of giving Timo Meier a run, right? He's trying to help his buddy get paid, all that fun stuff. I think this year we maybe see a little bit more selfish. I don't want to say selfish, but we see a little bit more of a shoot first mentality from Tomas Hertl this season. And another thing that I think that's going to help with Tomas Hertl is last year the Sharks were pretty much a one-line team, right? Basically, whatever line Timo Meier was on was good, and then all the other lines kind of struggled. And I think, granted, the people that are coming in are nowhere near as good as Timo Meier, but I think the top 6 is going to be a bit deeper. So the skill-wise, not as skilled as having Timo Meier, but if William Eklund, Anthony Duclair, you have Jacob Peterson, who's going to be in the mix for it, right? Like Mike Hoffman, who's whatever, but I still think on this team, he's still probably a top 6 part. Like, you're going to have just more pieces. And then, of course, Alexander Barabanov, the holdover from last year. Like, you're going to have a deeper top 6, not as skilled. Again, Timo Meier is better than all those players. Not a skilled top 6, but I think you're going to have a deeper top 6 that will allow the Sharks not to be so reliant on Timo Meier and Erik Karlsson to do everything, especially with both those players gone. So what this all means for Tomas Hertl is I think he's going to just have kind of maybe some better players around him, no matter who is playing with him. Again, none of these players are as good as Timo Meier. I just think they're a little bit deeper when it comes to that department, right? You're not having to kind of remember Matt Nieto played a bunch of top 6 minutes for the Sharks last year before he was traded. You're not going to have to kind of scramble to try to fill out that second line. So, if we go into the season with Couture and Barabanov, which feels like a very, very good pairing, and then if you want to put Hoffman with them, or you want to put Anthony Duclair, or if you want to put William Eklund, like you have some options where it's not just going to be a one-line team. So I think if Duclair plays with if you have Eklund and Hertl playing together and maybe Duclair as a potential line, right? You have a little bit of everything on there. We know Duclair's shooting ability. We know Eklund's ability his vision and his ability to pass. And I think Hertl can kind of be the glue on that line and then he can kind of get those dirty goals. While you have a guy like Anthony Duclair who can shoot, again, not as good of a shooter as Timo Meier, but again, Anthony Duclair is a former 30-goal scorer in this league. So, or if you want to make Hertl the focus and Hertl be the goal scorer, right? A guy like William Eklund on that line. And then if you want to put maybe a Mike Hoffman or a Jacob Peterson, or if you want to give Zadina a run, whoever you want to put in the top 6, there's just going to be more options where you're not having to kind of rely on Timo Meier and Erik Karlsson to do so much. And I think Hertl is going to be I think he's going to be a little bit more selfish this year, and he should be more selfish. He's one of the best players on this team, and he's going to be relied on to kind of help drive offense this season. So I expect Hertl to bounce, especially in the goal department. I think Hertl's a lock for 30 goals this year, and I could see a world, especially where a 35-goal campaign from Tomas Hertl, and then depending on who he's playing with, we'll get into the power play here when we talk with Granlund in a minute. A 40 assist campaign, a 75-point campaign from Hertl. We've seen him healthy the last 2 seasons, right? Again, he played a full 82 games, 2 seasons ago. And the only reason he missed games last year was because of a suspension and then because of the birth of a child. So I think a fully healthy Tomas Hertl, a deeper top 6 where he's going to be a focal point in providing offense for the Sharks. And I just better players. Again, not as good, but deeper quality players around him. So I think Hertl is a prime candidate to be a 75, leading the Sharks with 75 points this season, being their top scorer and being a piece for the Sharks going, that foundational piece for the Sharks going forward, where he can still be, if Hertl's your 2C behind Will Smith in the future, like sign me up for that. So, before we talk about Mikael Granlund and the power play and why I think he's going to be a big boost for it, and that's going to be kind of his role for the Sharks, do need to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our good friends over at FanDuel. And if you want to get ready for football season, they have incredible offers at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off Sunday NFL ticket from YouTube in YouTube TV. Now's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. There's always fun. MVP is always a really fun one for me to bet on, just because of you're kind of rooting for your favorite players to do good things. And Patrick Mahomes, just always, but maybe this is the year Herbert. Maybe he takes the step. Joe Burrow, maybe Josh Allen. Like there's plenty. Picking a quarterback in the AFC, kind of just pick which one's your favorite. You got a pretty good chance of maybe winning the MVP odds there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so Mikael Granlund. I think he is a candidate to be have a bounce back campaign. He's probably slotting in as your 3C right now, with Nico Sturm sliding to 4, Logan Couture as your 2C. But for him, I think it's just going to be positive regression. And I think, so we'll start with that. So if you look at Mikael Granlund's numbers last year, they're not super great, especially once he got traded to the Penguins. In 21 games with the Penguins, he had 1 goal, 4 assists, and was shooting at 2.6 shooting percentage last year. Before he got traded, he actually was having an okay-ish year with the Preds. He had 9 goals, 27 assists, 36 points in 58 games, and was shooting a little under 11% shooting percentage. His career average is 10.4 shooting percent. So I think, though, with Granlund, I think he just had a bad end to the season, and that can happen when guys get traded, especially mid-season. You look at Fabian Zetterlund, who every Devils fan talked up, you're going to love him, you're going to love him. And he had a terrible end of the season, right? Just because of, I think, some guys dealing with the shock of being traded. I know this wasn't Granlund's first time being traded mid-season. But even if you go back and look at what happened then when he got traded from Minnesota to Nashville, at 16 games, he had 1 goal, 4 assists for 5 points, and shot at 3.4%. That was way back in the 2018-19 season. So maybe Granlund just not a great guy when it comes to getting traded. The next season for Granlund, he played 63 games, and he had 30 points in that season with 13% shooting percentage, including 17 goals. So once he got settled, he had a pretty good season. And then he kind of tops off that 21-22 season that we're in 80 games, we had 64 points before kind of, again, last season, not as good of a season. But so I think for Granlund, like, being that 3C or playing on that third line, if you want to have Bordelot as a potential 3C, but I think Granlund's going to be the 3C right now. Going back to the Hertl argument, right? You have plenty of depth pieces there, and I think that's going to slide down, right? If you have Zetterlund or Zadina, or you want to put LeBanc on the third line, and Luke Kunin, I know he's coming back from an injury. Like, those are solid third line type of players, and I think just some regression shooting wise, positive regression shooting wise, is going to lead to more goals for Granlund. But I think where he's really going to make his impact is on the power play. And I think the Sharks power play in general, again, losing Erik Karlsson and Timo Meier is massive. But do you guys remember what power play 2 looked like last year? It was like Nick Bonino and basically whoever else you could throw out there. And I think, again, with more forward depth, quality forward depth pieces, I think we're going to see 2 okay-ish power plays. And I think Mikael Granlund is going to be one of the beneficiaries of that, especially if the Sharks run the 5-forward chaos theory that I'm hoping that they do at some point. But Mikael Granlund, he makes his money on the power play. So looking at his career stats, right, he has total. Total, he has in his career is 340 assists, 484 points. Power play goals, 33 power play goals compared to 104 even strength goals. And then, but the assists, 112 of his 339. So it's basically a third of his power play, of his assists have come on the power play. And I think that is where he's going to help. That's where he's going to make his money for the Sharks this year, is being a power play guy for them. And again, I don't think this power play is going to be insanely lethal, but I think you're going to see just better play on both ends, because I think David Quinn isn't going to have to just run out the first unit for 90 seconds and then have the second unit basically just play 30 seconds to try to give the top guys a breather. Having a more balanced power play, between power play 1 and power play 2, you're just not going to just put wear and tear on these guys as the season goes on. And David Quinn, like, you could, with his, way back when the Sharks hired David Quinn, I went through and kind of looked at his numbers. So the power play is kind of something that he's good at improving. So the 2018-19 power play for the Rangers ranked 17th at 19.38%. The next year, it jumped up to 7th at 22.91%. I don't expect a huge jump like that for the Sharks, but I think another year in the system bumping up, I think a more balanced unit, right? We're not going to have just power play 1 and then basically just start even strength for the last 30 seconds of the power play. I think that's going to lead to just a better power play overall, where you're not having to rely on your top guys to kind of carry the load. And Mikael Granlund, I think, is going to be a huge power play guy setting up, right? So if you have a power, just again, maybe you put like Hertl and Granlund, and then Duclair, and then Couture. Or if you want to put Couture on the second unit, like, you're going to get, you also have Will Smith in there, or not Will Smith, sorry, William Eklund. You have Zadina. Like, you have just more realistic options, and Mike Hoffman, who can do some stuff as well. Again, it's not just going to be like your Nick Boninos and Matt Nietos of the world playing the second power play because you just don't have enough guys. It is just going back to that depth and more balance on the between the two units, and especially if you run the 5 forwards, right, where I think you're going to have guys like either Couture or Granlund being maybe like the point guy for those, especially Granlund, whose ability to create those assists is going to lead to, I think, a bounce back in points for him. So I could see kind of like a repeat of what happened to Granlund, after he got traded the first time. So again, his first full season in Nashville, that was the year where he got cut. The 1920 season got cut short by COVID, but he had 30 points in 63 games. And, I could see Granlund, and especially him, maybe eating a little bit more on the power play. Like, he didn't really do too much on the power play that season, but as he kind of worked his way into it, he became a big part of the power play for the Preds. And I think, maybe looking at a potential 45-50, I think like a 45-point season with most of his work being done on the power play is kind of reasonable expectations for Granlund going into this year. Maybe if he has 45 points and then 20 of those come on the power play, like, would that surprise you that much? I think that's going to be where he's going to be the most useful, is kind of helping to add some depth and quality to that power play. So before we continue and we look at another new guy, Mackenzie Blackwood, and why I think there's a chance for him to rebound a little bit this season, be a bounce back candidate. Do want to, of course, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, probably a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 days a week right now, as we're in off-season mode. A couple more weeks of off-season, then we'll be back to 5 days a week as training camp is right around the corner, guys. So this week, make sure you guys are locked in, because we've got Ethan Cardwell. So that'll be Tuesday night, Wednesday morning for you. And then we have our State of the Franchise with the LA Kings. And if they can kind of take that next step to be one of the top teams in the Pacific, where goaltending might be a key issue for them this season. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. All right, so Mackenzie Blackwood, who the Sharks acquired for a 6th-round pick right before the draft this season. There are 2 things I think that could really help with him. One is he's healthy, right? And he's admitted the last couple seasons he's struggled with injuries, and that is going to be, I think, Mackenzie Blackwood's going to play as well as Mackenzie Blackwood's going to be based on his health. And that's something the Sharks are going to have to worry about, is that how much do you kind of ride him? Can he stay healthy? We've talked before about the kind of depth behind Blackwood. And Kaapo Kähkönen has been pretty healthy his career, but was terrible last season, right? We all know, we all watched it. And then Eetu Makiniemi, who's presumably the third starter, has also struggled with injuries, especially the last two seasons. Hasn't finished either of season one because of an injury he sustained I think it was a knee injury he sustained with the Chicago Wolves. Then last year he had some back issues at the end of the season, and they had to basically ride Aaron Dell in a playoff run. The Barracuda did, at least. So then after that, right, you have Magnus Krona, who's making his pro debut, Georgi Romanov, who's coming over from Russia. Right, it gets a little dicey after that. So, but I think Mackenzie Blackwood, him staying healthy is the biggest part of why I think he could be set for a rebound season. Again, Mackenzie Blackwood, if you go back in his career, he was very, very good. I know it feels like a million years ago pre-pandemic, but he was looked at as a potential dude for for the Devils. In that 1920 season that got cut short by COVID, 47 games played, he had a .915 save percentage and 277 goals against. And then he struggled with injuries. That 2021 season was a little funky with COVID. Like with the bubble, you're playing the same 7, 8 teams, whatever it was, over and over. But then struggled with injuries the past couple seasons and just wasn't able to stay healthy. And as the team got better in front of him, they had to kind of force to look elsewhere in goal. And I think another thing, is just going to be the style of play. So I did some, dug through some numbers on Money Puck here. And something that really kind of came to me was freezing the puck. Again, kind of a weird angle, but I'm going to go with it. So Mackenzie Blackwood, in that year that he was really good, 1920 season, he froze the puck 27. So he had 353 puck freezes. Expected puck freezes with 325. So he slowed things down, right? Trying to slow things down in front of him. And to that situation, you reset. Maybe you get fresh players out on the ice. You can kind of reset your defense. And then you look at last season with the Devils. I think, a younger team, more push, right? You have a lot better players. Felt like it was, they were like, just get the puck into your good players' hands and let them go do stuff. Like kind of keep pushing the pace. And so Mackenzie Blackwood last year had 107 puck freezes. Expected puck freezes was 139.7, so almost 40. Puck freezes above expected, minus 32.7. You look at Vita Vanacek, puck freezes last year, 195. Expected puck freezes, 325. So that's kind of the MO for the Devils last year, was just push the play. Just get the puck and get it out. So that way, they try to capitalize on your player's speed, your skill, right? But maybe that's not Mackenzie Blackwood's style. You look at the Sharks, okay? Reimer and Kaapo Kähkönen. Reimer had 337 puck freezes, expected puck freezes 310. Puck freezes above expected 26, almost 27. Puck freezes above expected. Kaapo Kähkönen 287. Expected puck freezes 264. 22 and a half puck freezes. So the Sharks want to slow it down, especially now without Erik Karlsson, where they are not going to have that kind of transition wizard on the back end. I think they're going to kind of play a little bit slower, methodical pace, where you're going to, okay, let's win the draw and then work our way out, instead of trying to push the play, especially when you don't have a puck moving defenseman, right? I think that's going to be their MO is like, if you're the goalie, just melt it down. Let's reset. We can win the draw and then try to move the puck out that way, kind of a more methodical way. And I think for Blackwood and for goalies, right, you can kind of, yes, there's going to be goals off draws. You have to win the draw. But I think that's going to be, the faceoffs are going to be a critical part of the Sharks this season. And, I think Hertl and Couture and Nico Sturm and Granlund will see about Grant, but I think they have guys who can win give you a fair opportunity to win the draw most nights. Not that I don't think winning faceoffs is the biggest thing in the long scheme. Yes, you're going to have your crucial ones, but in the the grand scheme of things, it's who can win the battles off the draw. So, but for the Sharks, right, I think they're going to kind of play a little bit slower, methodical, and I think that's going to go into Blackwood's hands of being able to kind of reset, being able to kind of see what's coming in front of you. And when you play that a little bit helter-skelter, we saw with Erik Karlsson, right? For every 9 great plays Erik Karlsson does, there's always that one play where it's just like, and it kind of puts your goalies in a bind. So I think for the Sharks, coming into this system and if the coaches are saying like, just slow it down, stop it, we'll get to a face-off, I think that's going to go right into Mackenzie Blackwood's style of play, and being able to kind of reset and get fresh players on the ice and not play that kind of helter-skelter, because the Sharks just don't have the skill to kind of push the pace that we've that like the Devils do. And I know last year the Sharks, they tried to kind of be a little bit more run and gun, especially in the first part of the season. But David Quinn made that adjustment last year to kind of bring it back a little bit right around kind of January-ish when they were just kind of giving up a bunch of 2-on-1s. And so I think there's going to be a more concerted effort this year to try to maybe play a little bit more conservatively, especially without Erik Karlsson on the roster. So I think that's just going to play into Mackenzie Blackwood's hands a bunch more. So what does a bounce back season look like for Mackenzie Blackwood? I think for Sharks fans, just seeing any save percentage that starts with a 9 is going to be a huge win. I could see like a 9, maybe he's kind of flirting with like a 2.9, maybe anything under 3 for the goals against average. This team's probably going to be really boring this season, but a save percentage that starts with a 9 and goals against average that's anywhere close to like 3, you're probably going to be like, okay, like Mackenzie Blackwood was a solid piece for the Sharks, and they only gave up a 6th-round pick for him. So that's going to be it for me today. Like I said, we'll be back later this week. We have Ethan Cardwell makes his appearance on his debut on Locked On Sharks. We're going to talk about a lot about his draft, and kind of what happened, especially during the COVID era. Talk about Brandt Clarke, and Brandt Clarke's really good. And then, of course, speaking about Brandt Clarke, we talk with Eddie from Locked On Kings about the state of the Kings and if they're ready to kind of finish off this rebuild and be one of the top players in the Pacific. So make sure, again, you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at My Fry Hole. And until Tuesday night, Wednesday, bye, friends.